We all like to believe we'd do something if we saw someone in trouble. But the truth is, most people don't. They look away, hurry on, convince themselves it's not their fight. That's why no one noticed the small girl standing by the bus stop, clutching her sleeve, eyes swollen from crying. She tried asking for help once, twice, but the world around her kept walking, until she tugged at a stranger's arm. Jasonstatham turned, saw the fear in her eyes and the faint bruise peeking from beneath her sleeve. She leaned closer, whispered something only he heard, and whatever it was, it stopped him cold. The crowd didn't know what was about to happen, but from the look on his face, they could tell one thing for sure: somewhere nearby, the man who'd hurt her sister was about to regret it for the rest of his life. Before we continue, if you've been here before, you know these stories aren't just about Jason Statham. They're about moments that test who we are when no one else is watching. So if you believe strength isn't about fame or fists, but about doing what's right when it counts, stay till the end. Because this one will remind you why some heroes don't need a spotlight. The afternoon sun hit the city like a tired sigh, melting through the glass and steel until everything felt heavy: the air, the noise, even the people. Commuters shuffled along the crosswalk, faces buried in phones, shoulders brushing without apology. It was the kind of day that looked normal from a distance, but up close felt a little off. Jason Statham had just stepped out of a cafe near the corner of King Street, sunglasses low, black coat half-buttoned against the wind. He wasn't there to be noticed, he never was. A simple walk, that's all he wanted. No press, no cameras, no staged smiles. Just a rare hour where the world didn't demand anything from him. He'd barely taken 3 steps when he heard it, soft, shaky, almost lost under the noise. A child's voice. "Excuse me, please, someone help me." He turned slightly. At first he couldn't tell where it came from. People were moving too fast, talking too loud. But then he saw her, a little girl, maybe 7, standing by the edge of the street near the bus stop. Her coat was 2 sizes too big, her hair tangled, her small hands clutching her sleeve so tight her knuckles had gone white. Nobody stopped. They looked briefly, then turned away. Some adjusted their headphones. Others crossed the street entirely. It wasn't cruelty. It was something worse: indifference. Jason started walking toward her, slow and steady, like approaching a frightened animal. When he got close enough, she finally looked up. Her eyes were glassy, rimmed with tears and dirt. "Hey," he said softly, lowering himself to her level. "What's wrong?" The girl hesitated, her lips trembling. They took my sister." He frowned. "Who did?" Her bottom lip quivered harder. "A man, big man, he hit her and took her in the car." Jason's chest tightened. "Where?" She pointed down the street toward an alley that opened near the market district. The kind of place that always smelled like old oil and bad intentions. "When did this happen?" he asked. "Just now," she whispered. "I tried to tell people, but nobody listened." Jason looked around, the crowd, the traffic, the blank faces, all moving, all pretending. He'd seen that same blindness before, too many times. He didn't blame them, not anymore. Some people can't handle seeing what's real. He turned back to her. "You did good coming here. What's your name?" "Maya." "Maya," he repeated gently. "I'm Jason. You stay right here, yeah? Don't move until I come back." Her small hand shot out, grabbing his sleeve. "Please, please don't let him hurt her." Jason met her eyes, and for a second, something old flickered there, that quiet fury he'd spent years keeping buried. "I won't," he said, and meant it. He slipped his coat tighter and started walking in the direction she'd pointed. The wind picked up, dragging the smell of rain through the street. Behind him, Maya stood frozen, small, hopeful, and terrified all at once. The alley came into view like a scar between the buildings. Trash bins lined the walls, graffiti carved over older graffiti, and the faint sound of a car engine idled somewhere deeper inside. Jason slowed his steps, his body shifting into that silent rhythm: steady breathing, light feet, every sense turned razor-sharp. Halfway in, he saw them. A dark SUV parked, crooked, passenger door open. A man stood near it, tall, heavy-set, leather jacket, cigarette glowing between 2 fingers. And beside the car, a girl, older than Maya, maybe 12, sitting on the ground, her cheek red and swollen. She wasn't crying anymore, just staring blankly at the concrete like she'd already learned that screaming didn't help. Jason's jaw flexed. The man noticed him almost immediately. "Oi," he barked, tossing his cigarette. "Street's closed, mate, keep walking." Jason stopped a few feet away. "Let her go." The man smirked. "You serious? You know her?" Jason's voice didn't change. "Doesn't matter." The man chuckled, shaking his head. "You one of those charity types, or just bored?" "Neither." "Then why don't you turn around and—" The man didn't finish. Jason's hand moved faster than thought, grabbed his wrist, twisted, and slammed his palm against the hood of the car. The cigarette hit the ground. "Let her go." The man grunted, trying to push back. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Jason leaned closer, voice low. "The guy giving you one chance to walk away." The man spat on the ground, forcing a grin through clenched teeth. "Big mistake." He swung. Jason ducked, landed a clean jab to the ribs, then another to the gut, controlled, efficient, surgical. The man stumbled back, gasping for air. "Next one breaks something," Jason warned. The girl on the ground flinched as the man lunged again. Jason sidestepped, grabbed his jacket, and drove him into the car door with a force that rattled metal. The sound echoed down the alley. When the man tried to move again, Jason pinned him with an elbow across the throat. "You like hitting kids, yeah," he said quietly. "Try someone your own size." The man struggled, but Jason's grip tightened until his face turned red. Then, finally, he let go just enough for the man to collapse onto the wet pavement, wheezing. Jason turned to the girl. "You okay?" She nodded shakily, hugging her arms. "He said he'd take me to my mum, but she's gone." Jason frowned. "Gone where?" The girl shook her head, tears streaking her face. "I don't know. He just said she was waiting, but she was." Jason crouched beside her, scanning the street beyond. "What's your name?" "Leela." "All right, Leela. Maya's waiting for you by the bus stop. We're gonna go get her, yeah." She hesitated. "He said he'd come back if I told." Jason looked over his shoulder at the man now curled against the car, coughing. "No, he won't." He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and called it in police dispatch, short and clear. "Male suspect, mid-30s, dark SUV, attempted abduction, King Street Alley. Victim safe." Then he hung up, pocketed the phone, and turned back to Leela. "Come on, kid, let's get you home." They walked back the way he'd come, the sounds of the city slowly folding back around them. Maya saw them first, her eyes went wide and she ran forward, arms outstretched. "Leela." The sisters collided in a hug so tight it looked like neither would ever let go again. Jason stood a few feet away, watching quietly. There was something about moments like this, raw, messy, human, that hit harder than applause ever could. When the sirens began to wail in the distance, the girls looked up, scared again. Jason knelt to their level. "It's okay, they're here to help now." Maya nodded, still clinging to her sister. "Thank you," she whispered. No one else listened. Jason smiled faintly. Then they missed the best part of the story. The officers arrived minutes later, cautious but quick. They recognized him instantly, of course, the looks, the quiet murmurs. But Jason didn't care about that. He gave his statement, handed over the suspect, and stayed just long enough to see the girls placed safely in the back of a patrol car. When one of the officers asked for his full name, he just said, "Jason, that's enough." He turned to leave, but the smaller girl's voice stopped him again. "Wait." Maya ran up, holding something in her tiny hand, a small silver charm shaped like a star. "It's from our mum," she said softly. "She said if we ever meet someone kind, we should give it to them." Jason looked at it for a long moment before crouching down again. "You keep it," he said gently. "You're the kind one here." She frowned, "But you saved us." He smiled, that quiet, unspoken kind that didn't need words. "Doesn't mean I need to be remembered." The girl hesitated, then wrapped her arms around him. It was small, fast, but it stopped him for a second, that kind of hug that doesn't ask for permission, just gratitude. Jason stood slowly as the car doors shut, the lights flashing red and blue against the glass buildings. When they drove off, the street felt quieter, not peaceful exactly, but lighter. He started walking again, hands in his coat pockets, head low. For most people, that would have been the end of it, but for Jason, it never ended there, because he knew something didn't fit. That man, the one with the SUV, wasn't just some random predator. He'd moved too confidently, too planned. The story wasn't over. A few blocks later, he ducked into a narrow street cafe and sat by the window, eyes tracing the reflection of passing cars. He took a sip of cold coffee and waited. Then it happened. The same black SUV drove past. Only this time, someone else was behind the wheel. A man in a gray suit, phone to his ear, jaw tight with anger. Jason's instincts lit up instantly. He stood, dropped a few bills on the counter and slipped out the back door. The car turned left toward the industrial district, a place no one drove to without a reason. Jason followed on foot, then by cab, keeping distance. He didn't need to chase. He just needed to confirm what his gut already knew. This wasn't about one man. It was about something bigger. By the time he reached the edge of the old docks, night had fallen. The SUV was parked near a warehouse, the lights inside dim but moving. Jason crouched behind a stack of crates, watching. Inside, two men unloaded small boxes from the trunk. They weren't careful. Inside one, he spotted what looked like passports, dozens of them, women's names, children's photos. He exhaled slowly. Human trafficking. And the sisters, they'd been next. Jason's jaw clenched, his whole body going still like a storm holding its breath. He checked the warehouse door. Unlocked. Typical. He slipped inside, silent as a shadow. The air was thick with dust and diesel. He could hear their voices now, laughing, arguing, careless. Boss said no more kids, one grumbled, too messy. Boss doesn't care, the other snapped, long as the cash clears. Jason stepped forward from the dark. You might want to call your boss, he said quietly. They froze. One turned, eyes widening. Who the hell? Jason moved before he finished. The first man hit the ground hard, knocked out cold. The second reached for his pocket. Jason's boot came down on his hand, pinning it to the floor. I asked nicely, Jason said, calm but deadly. Where's the boss? The man whimpered, office upstairs. Jason released the pressure. Good, you stay down. He climbed the metal stairs 2 at a time. The office door was half open, and inside sat a man in his 50s, neat suit, silver hair, cigar burning in one hand. The kind of man who thought money made him untouchable. Let me guess, Jason said, stepping inside. You're the one who sends men to snatch kids off the street. The man looked up, unfazed. You're interfering with business you don't understand. Jason's stare was cold enough to burn. No, I understand it perfectly. You just picked the wrong street. The man smirked. You think you can stop this? There'll always be more. Jason stepped closer, voice dropping. Not tonight, there won't. The man reached for something under his desk, but Jason was faster. One hand slammed the drawer shut, the other pulled him forward by his tie. You hurt one kid, Jason whispered, and you answer to me. The man struggled, gasping as Jason's grip tightened. Papers scattered. The cigar fell. Somewhere below, a siren wailed in the distance. Jason let go just before the man passed out, leaving him slumped against his desk. He picked up the phone from the floor, dialed the police, and left the line open. When he stepped back outside, the night air hit cold against his skin. Blue lights were already cutting through the fog. He didn't wait for applause or questions. He just walked past the flashing lights and noise, back into the quiet. And miles away, 2 sisters finally slept without fear, unaware that the stranger who had stopped to listen had ended more than their nightmare. He'd ended the men behind it. But Jason knew better. For every one of them there were more waiting, and as long as the world kept looking away, he'd keep walking toward it. The sky was still bruised with the last light of dusk when Jason walked away from the warehouse. The air smelled like metal and rain, the kind of scent that stays in your clothes long after the storm ends. Sirens faded behind him. Tires screeched somewhere distant, but in his head it was silent. He passed under a flickering streetlight, hands deep in his coat pockets. He'd done what he came to do, but he didn't feel finished. He never did, because the faces stayed. The girls, the fear, the way they'd looked when no one stopped to help, that stuck harder than the fights ever did. He reached the main road just as a cab slowed beside him. The driver leaned over, recognition flickering in his eyes, but Jason just raised a hand. Not tonight, mate, he said quietly, crossing instead toward a small all-night diner. Inside, the place smelled like burnt toast and old coffee. A waitress behind the counter looked up, tired but kind. "Kitchen's closing soon," she said. Jason nodded, "Just tea, black." He sat near the window, watching the reflection of police lights still bouncing faintly off the clouds. In the corner booth, an older man was reading a paper. Two teenagers argued softly over a phone screen. Life moved on like it always did, unaware that a few blocks away, monsters were being loaded into police vans. Jason took a slow sip of tea. His knuckles ached, small reminders of what it took to keep peace in a world that didn't notice when it broke. He flexed his fingers, then reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, the silver star charm. Maya had slipped it into his palm before the police car drove off. He thought he'd given it back, but somehow it had stayed with him. He turned it over between his fingers, watching the way it caught the light. For a moment, he could almost hear her voice again, small, trembling, full of hope. Please don't let him hurt her. He'd kept that promise, but promises like that always came with echoes. He set the charm down beside his cup, then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Jasonstatham, a woman's voice said, cautious. "Who's asking?" "My name's Detective Hall. I'm with City Police. You were involved in the warehouse incident earlier tonight." Jason exhaled slowly. "If you're calling to ask what happened, you've got the footage. I left the line open." "I know," she said. "That's why I'm calling. The chief wants to thank you quietly, of course. That ring's been under investigation for months. You just blew it open." Jason rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I didn't do it for thanks." "I figured," she said, her tone softening. "But you should know that wasn't some local crew. They were connected to a wider network. We've got names, accounts, movements, all because of what you did tonight." Jason's jaw tightened. "What about the girls?" "They're safe. Social services took them in. Their aunt's on the way from out of town." Jason nodded slowly, though she couldn't see it. "Good." There was a pause. "You could come in, make a statement, help us officially. We could use someone like you." Jason smiled faintly. "You don't want someone like me, detective." "Why not?" He looked out the window at the quiet street. "Because I don't follow the rule book. I follow what's right." She didn't argue, she just sighed. "Then keep doing that. Just try not to leave another warehouse full of unconscious suspects next time." Jason's tone didn't change. "No promises." When the call ended, he sat there for a long time, the sound of the ticking clock filling the silence. Then he stood, dropped a few bills on the counter, and walked back into the night. By the time he reached the bus stop where it had all begun, the city had gone still. Rain puddles glistened on the pavement, reflecting the orange of the streetlights. And there, sitting on the same bench from before, was Maya. He blinked, surprised. "You're supposed to be with your aunt." She looked up, eyes red from crying but calmer than before. "She's coming tomorrow. The police dropped me at the shelter tonight. I didn't want to stay inside." Jason walked closer, sitting down beside her. "You shouldn't be out here alone, kid." She hugged her knees. "I couldn't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face, the man who hit Leela." Jason looked down at her, his voice gentle. "You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore." She shook her head. "But there are others, right? You said there were more." He hesitated. "Kids always saw through what you tried to hide." "Yeah," he said quietly, "there are." She turned toward him, serious in a way no 7-year-old should be. "Then who helps them?" Jason didn't answer right away. He looked out at the road, the long line of headlights stretching through the rain. "Sometimes," he said finally, "the world waits for someone else to do it, and sometimes you just stop waiting." Maya nodded slowly, like she understood more than she should. They sat in silence for a while. A stray dog trotted across the street. Somewhere nearby, a bottle clinked against a trash bin. Finally, Jason spoke again. "Your sister, she's strong, she didn't give up." Maya smiled faintly. "She said she only ran because I was too slow." Jason chuckled softly. "Sounds like something a big sister would say." The little girl's smile faded. "You're not going to see us again, are you?" Jason looked at her, really looked. "Maybe not, but that doesn't mean I'll forget you." She studied his face for a moment, then nodded. "Then I won't forget you either." He stood, pulling his coat tighter. "You should head back before someone worries." She slid off the bench. then reached into her pocket and handed him something small, a folded piece of paper. "I drew something for you." He unfolded it. It was simple. A stick figure man standing between two girls holding hands, smiling. Above it, in shaky handwriting, she'd written, "Thank you for listening." Jason's throat tightened slightly. He folded it carefully and tucked it into his coat beside the silver charm. "That's a good picture," he said softly. She smiled. "You should smile more too." He did, just a little. "I'll work on it." When she finally walked away, he waited until she turned the corner before moving again. The night felt different now, not lighter, but quieter in a way that mattered. The next morning, headlines buzzed across the news. Child trafficking ring busted in London Dock District. The reports called it a police breakthrough, a long-awaited win. No one mentioned Jason. That was how he preferred it. He was already gone by then, back to his quiet life, training, reading, existing in the background. But every so often, something small would remind him. The sight of a school crossing guard, the laughter of two sisters holding hands, and he'd remember why he never stopped stepping in. One afternoon, a week later, he got a letter. No return address, just his name written in the careful handwriting of someone still learning. Inside was a note. "Dear Jason, thank you for saving us. Aunt says you're like a guardian angel, but I think you're just someone who listens. Leela said I should stop being scared now. I'm trying. Love, Maya." He read it twice, folded it neatly, and slipped it into the same pocket as the drawing. Then he went back to his routine: workouts at dawn, long walks at dusk. But there was a new weight in his silence now. Not a burden, a purpose. One evening he stopped outside a small community gym he sometimes passed. The lights inside were flickering, the paint peeling, but the sound, the thud of gloves, the rhythm of focus, felt right. A boy inside was practicing on a bag too big for him, hitting it with all the wrong form but all the right heart. Jason watched for a minute, then stepped in. The boy froze mid-swing. You're Jasonstatham." Jason smiled faintly. "Depends who's asking." The boy grinned nervously. "I saw you in the transporter." Jason chuckled. "That was a long time ago. You train here?" The boy nodded. "Yeah, when my dad can afford it. He says it keeps me out of trouble." Jason glanced around the empty room, the old mats and scuffed floors. "He's right." The boy tilted his head. "You fight too?" Jason smiled, a bit. "Wanna show me?" Jason paused, then nodded toward the bag. "All right, but only if you promise to listen first." The boy nodded eagerly. Jason took off his coat, adjusted the boy's stance, and showed him how to move: small, controlled, efficient. The kid laughed when he finally landed a clean jab. "That's it," Jason said. "Doesn't take much, just timing and patience." The boy looked up at him, beaming. "You should be a teacher." Jason's smile faded slightly. "Maybe I already am." Later that night, when he left the gym, he stood under the streetlight again. The same kind of light as the one from that day. The same city, the same noise. But something felt different now, a shift so small, only someone like him would notice. He reached into his pocket, pulling out Maya's note and the silver star. For a long time, he just looked at them. Two reminders that sometimes the smallest voices could pull someone back from the hardest silences. He held the charm up against the light, and for the first time in a long while, he smiled, really smiled. Behind him, life went on: cars, chatter, laughter, the endless noise of a city that didn't always see what mattered. But Jason did. He turned down the next street, coat brushing in the wind, steps quiet, steady. And somewhere far away, a little girl was telling her sister that the man who helped them wasn't just strong, he was good. And maybe, in a world that keeps breaking in the same places, that's all it takes: one man who listens, one act that reminds the rest of us to stop walking past the pain. Because when Jasonstatham froze that night, it wasn't out of shock, it was out of understanding. He'd seen that fear before, he'd lived it, and he wasn't about to let history repeat itself. The next morning, the gym's owner found an envelope taped to the door. Inside was a short note and a donation large enough to rebuild the place entirely. No name, just a message written in the same calm, neat handwriting. "For the kids who need somewhere to learn how to stand again, J.S." And that's how it always was with him. No cameras, no thanks, no noise. Just silence, the right kind this time. The kind that comes when justice has already spoken.